5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
What do you think, Marge? All I need is a title.
So, all the way back in the distant past of June 2019, I produced this video. And it was about things that happened in the further distant past of April and May of 2019 to one of the largest atheist organizations with perhaps the most reach of any such organization on the internet. The reason I mention this is because both that video and this video and the next video have dealt or will be dealing with the same subject matter. That is, various aspects of transgenderism. The last video was an attempt to round up all the info that I had at the time of the clusterfuck that was called the Rationality Rules kerfuffle. For more on that, simply watch the last video. It was made as a means for telling people on the internet to go simply watch the video rather than having me explain it on various YouTube chat windows. Now we have this video, and this video, besides being my 100th video on this channel, yay, is more of a direct continuation of the events that we covered in the last video. Because it involves what happened when I commented on a YouTube video concerning the fact that Tracy, Jenna, and Claire, amongst others, did not like the fact that the ACA decided that their first statement to Stephen Woodford was too tough. They rescinded that statement and issued a new, more diplomatic one. The aforementioned Tracy, Jen, and Claire decided that this was pandering to a bad guy and resigned their positions with the ACA along with a few others. So I decided to jump into the comments section and leave my own opinion. Now let me be clear. When you state an opinion, either on the internet or in real life, you'd best be ready to hear from people who disagree with you. And this video is certainly not in response to such disagreements. However, what goes beyond the pale is when people who only know that you say you are something, then speculate that you really mean you must be the exact opposite thing. In this case, I stated that I am a trans woman, but Essence of Thought and others either insinuated that I was not or speculated that I harbored some internalized transphobia, which is completely untrue, and beside the point that I was making. And these mistakes were made, I believe, simply because I agree with the basics of Stephen Woodford's opinions on trans women in women's sports. Now let's get a couple of important things out of the way before we dive into the dumpster fire that is Essence of Thought's response to me. First, I support transgendered rights, period. Full stop. This means that if the police or the government or society in general turns against myself or others in the trans community, I will be there, giving what support I can. However, this does not mean that I will jump at everything the general trans community says is a threat because they say it is. President Trump made a policy decision that transgendered people should not be in the military, which is something that I disagree with. However, as far as I know, this has largely not been carried out by the military, who understand that this policy goes against their overall mission, which is to maintain the security of our country. This does not mean that an opinion against trans women in women's sports is somehow a transphobic opinion. This is the same as saying that the NFL should be open to nerds playing in the league. This would kill national football as a sport, as the quality of the games would immediately suffer. Are we saying that the NFL is taking away the human rights of nerds who might want to play national football? How about baseball, where the MLB has put anti-doping measures into place to combat steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs? Isn't this discriminating against people who use PEDs? Even worse, what about the human rights of nerds or PED users who want to play in their respective sports? The answer is, this has never been about denying human rights to anyone, not nerds, not PED users, and not transgendered women. Sports participation is a privilege, not a right. If it were a right, then I should be able to try out for the college-level basketball program in my town, despite the fact that I am transgendered, 51 years old, no longer a college student, and I'm an amputee. I can't play the damn game, but I fucking want to. And if I'm not allowed to play, my human rights are being violated. Do you see how stupidly asinine this is? I will also point out, as I believe I did in the last video, that I do not care that Tracy, Jen, and Claire have left the ACA. The ACA will survive and prosper without them. If they'd wanted to fight for their point of view regarding the ACA's more diplomatic statement, they should have stuck around and made those arguments. Instead, they turned tail and ran away like butthurt little children. I will also point out that essence of thought is not the paragon of virtue and information that is being put forward on the internet. In fact, several YouTubers have put out videos stating that EOT is just as bad, if not worse, than Stephen Woodford was on his videos on the subject. Anyways, let's get to the YouTube comments that caused this whole thing. One quick note. I used my Kalon primary account for these responses, which I probably should not have done. Kalon Primary is my account that is dedicated to entertainment subject material and really should not have been involved in this conversation. I will take better care of my brand names in the future. The problem with the ACA's first statement was that it was issued before Woodford got home and was able to issue his apology video or his correction. He felt blindsided, and that is where we, those who supported Woodford, came down on this issue. And by the way, I'm a trans woman who would never think to compete against cis women in sports specifically because of these sorts of issues. Also, I don't need the ACA to attempt to represent me in trans issues. I will do that just fine myself. The ACA and atheist community should stick to what they know best: atheism. So Essence of Thought replies, he'd had weeks to sort it out before he left, and he could have recorded it on his mobile at any point. And he should have taken the video down immediately rather than allow it to pump out anti-trans propaganda. So that excuse doesn't work in any way. To which I reply, given a sort of symbiosis between all the stories I have heard from Tracy, Jen, Claire, Matt, and Rationality Rules, which is Stephen Woodford, I agree with most of what you have just said. I think that Matt greenlit the whole thing. He allowed Woodford to appear on AXP, and in his statement on the subject, he specifically mentioned that one of the conditions was that Stephen not mention the controversy, which to me sounds like a chicken shit move. If you have a controversy, the best thing you can do is get out in front of it. So I'm going to jump in here. The problem with Essence of Thought's statement here is that it assumes that you know when Stephen Woodford had the time or opportunity to record any response to the controversy, or that he knew that there was a controversy at all until he was told by Claire when he arrived at the ACA in Austin. Also, you assume that he would have been comfortable using unfamiliar equipment to record a video. I know that in my case, I have all of my graphics, programs, and preferred settings on one laptop in my home, so any hotfix released video would have simply had to have been remade once I got home. The point is, we simply are not privy to Stephen's timescale as opposed to when the ACA released their statements. We know, according to Claire, that he was informed about the growing controversy and he agreed to address the issue before going on the air with the ACA programs. Now, he probably could have used a mobile device to record an apology or logged into YouTube and moved the video to a private setting after being informed. If I had been the ACA, that would have gone a long way toward making me feel better about the whole situation, and it might have avoided both of the ACA statements. I am not sure of the time frame after the shows, but at the very least, knowing that Claire mentioned the need to do an apology video, Woodford could have either started recording a video via mobile, or he could have at least started working on a script. Both of these options could have easily been done before leaving the United States. Regardless of all of that, this was not done, and this is why Woodford felt blindsided, because the first ACA statement had been released before he had gotten home. So to him, it looked like things were mostly resolved. He went on to the shows, promised to do the apology video, and then he lands in London in time to see the entire situation has blown up behind him. In actuality, the ACA probably should have not released either statement in their form. They should have gone with Claire's 2-sentence suggestion and kept all opinionation to a minimum. As to the actual videos themselves, I have found a lot of the factual information correct. Trans women do have a significant advantage over cis women in some sports, and this is something that the sports authorities will have to figure out because, on the one hand, we are not going anywhere, and the issue will therefore remain in play, and second, we already have cis women filing federal lawsuits against schools where a trans woman has taken one or two of the top spots in racing, leaving a couple cisgendered women without scholarships that they otherwise may have won. Also, the person that Woodford mentioned in his video just won first place in a weightlifting event in Australia, I believe it was. I believe you would find the amazing atheist view on this issue informative. He states that if you are for trans women being women, then you have to allow for trans women in women's sports because women are women. So they have larger muscle mass and so on. It is the same as any other person with a physical advantage playing against any other person without those advantages or with other advantages. If you agree with Woodford in calling for trans women to be stripped of numerous human rights, as he did, then you have very likely internalized transphobia. Okay, let's look into this for a bit. First, as I state later in a response that Essence of Thought does not respond to, Essence of Thought does not know me, so for him to accuse me of internalizing transphobia is simply ridiculous. People should be able to have a disagreement on the internet without resorting to the tired, old, cliched, racist, bigoted, sexist, homophobic, transphobic labels that are so old that the colors are washing out of various fucking flags. If you agree with Woodford in calling for trans women to be stripped of various human rights, as he did, where? I have a link to the original video, and I watched it again, and all he does is point out the problem and provide some facts to back up his case. You could do the same on the other side. It's called having a debate. So first, I don't agree that he said what you say he said. And in fact, he's only stated that the rules in sports participation need to be made clearer, so that we all know who can fairly compete in which sports, if any such moves need to be made at all, if you follow the amazing atheists on the issue as I do. Okay, so I start by saying that it seems that I am being labeled as a transphobe. Then I explain that there is a difference between being factually correct and the tactics you use to make your factual point. You can make a factually correct point in the exactly wrong way, which I think Stephen Woodford addresses in his 2 videos following up upon and correcting the original. I also specifically stated another disagreement I have with Jen, Tracy, and the others who left, who feel that unless you are involved with women's sports, your opinions are irrelevant. That would be like me saying that unless you are on the team, whether you think that the Denver Broncos will make the Super Bowl this year is not relevant. In fact, anyone at all can have an opinion on a subject matter, even one that they have little to no education or interest about. What they perhaps should have said was that the opinions of those people not directly involved in women's sports are not relevant to them. No. I'm not saying that I could beat a cis woman in sports. I'm a trans woman, I'm 51 years old, and I'm a leg amputee, so I'm not going to be beating anyone in any sport. As to the timing of the ACA response to Stephen, according to a number of people involved in the situation at the time, that's not what happened. Stephen appeared at the Cincinnati conference, met Matt, headed to Austin, and once there he was informed that some controversy had started regarding his video. At that point, he could have done a few things that Essence of Thought pointed out. He could have unlisted the video, made it private, or a few other things. This did not happen, and that's unfortunate. However, he did state that he would do an apology and a correction video once he got home. He apparently was told not to bring up the subject on the air, which again was unfortunate, as it robbed Stephen of the opportunity to address the issue right away. Once he got back, the ACA's first statement was released, and this is why Stephen felt blindsided. To be fair, the ACA should have issued a statement, but having heard that Stephen was going to release an apology and then a correction, they should have led with a more neutral statement about the controversy and then tweaked the statement after that, in reaction to what Stephen issued later. Actually, Stephen did not correct his factual statement. His correction was about the manner in which he made his points, not on the actual facts of the subject of the video, which more people than simply Stephen Woodford would have confirmed. This is where I said that you can talk about an issue and be correct on the facts, but talk about it in a completely wrong way. The fact that the original video was transphobic was a problem because the issue of trans-caused inequality in women's sports is an issue, and it is one that is about to be fought out in federal courts, which is probably the wrong place to have that conversation, but things are as they are. I have said it before and I'll say it again. Biological men's and women's bodies are different, and once a boy has a male puberty and has grown into a man, there's very little you can do to turn back the clock and reverse that process. This means that the solution lies elsewhere, and for me, the solution is to not do much. Simply give women across the board the option not to compete against women if they think there is an unfair advantage. Otherwise, women should compete against whatever advantages they find themselves up against. So a user comes up and supports my arguments, which I think made the conversation a lot better. It's better in YouTube conversations when more than two people are talking in the conversation. In the Mars Sidonia's response, the fallacy is reiterated that participation in sports is a human right, when in fact it is a privilege. Associations such as the International Olympic Committee might come up with things about what they consider to be their egalitarian ideals, but at the end of the day, I myself will not be getting onto the gymnastic teams, whether they be men's or women's teams. Are my human rights being taken away? I don't think so. I'll touch on this part of the conversation real quick because it is the essence of my argument. Essence of Thought and others in the trans community have reacted to these events largely through their emotions, their feels. In part, this is because they feel that the trans community in general is under attack from people wanting to do them serious harm, and in some cases they are right, and this is terrible. However, there are a lot of perceived threats out there that weren't really threats. If we react to every single one, we become the boy who cried wolf, and our message is more easily dismissed as fear-mongering. As I said earlier, President Trump wanted a ban on trans people in the military. I'm not sure he ever got that because the military never wanted to pursue it. Yet you should have seen the blow-up all over the trans community online. It is the same in this case, where a YouTuber brings up the valid issue of trans women having a major advantage in women's sport, but some of the trans community are crying that their civil rights are about to be taken away. I am more interested in what we can do to support transgendered rights in a concrete manner, so that trans people are not killed. In 2018, 26 transgender people were murdered. That number stands at 10 as of June of 2019. That is 36 people too many, and I stand for those people. Speaking to Essence of Thought here, exactly no he hasn't. In the clip which you have copied,
and I'm convinced that unless quickly rectified, this will kill women's sport. I don't want to see the day when women's athletics is dominated by Y chromosomes, but without a change in policy, that is precisely what's going to happen.
That's his statement, taken from your most recent video, and that's what he argues on. He does not state anywhere that he is in favor of taking human rights away from trans people, and to continue to claim it is simply dishonest. Now, I believe this part was from the Mars Sidonia, and to this I would say that I don't have a problem with anyone. I just recognize that trans women in women's sports is an issue, and people are now having to address that issue. How they do so and to what extent they address the issue is something that is more up to the people directly involved in those sports. At the end of the conversation, John Iacoletti from the ACA itself jumped in to comment that Stephen had had more than enough time to record an apology and or a correction, or perhaps both. That would depend on how much time there was between Stephen coming to the ACA library, his talk with Claire, and any talks in preparation for the live shows, and then the live shows themselves. So there could have been some time, but possibly not. I was not there, Essence of Thought was not there, and John Iacoletti puts out a different timeline than anyone else. It's possible that he is right, but who knows? On the issue of the timing, I've already suggested that Stephen could have possibly done a few of the things, and if there was truly some controversy blowing up about the video, he should have addressed it immediately. I certainly would have. So, while checking around the internet today, I discovered that Essence of Thought has produced an hour-long video response to both Stephen Woodford and Matt Dillahunty regarding the whole transphobia kerfuffle and the fallout at the ACA. In this video, Essence of Thought again repeated the same stupid mistake of saying that Stephen Woodford called for an end to trans women's human rights, when all he did was give us his opinion on what continued participation in women's sports by trans women would do to those sports. Not only that, but I posted a reply to the video, again correcting him and inviting him to post his comments in a reply to this video. It seems as though some of his critics were right when they said that Essence of Thought has the habit of removing comments that disagree with him, or he will block people who question his facts. Quotes. I know this because it seems that my comment was removed in a cowardly act of making sure that your one and chosen message gets out there without dissent. What is really quite bad is that the comment section of this video is filled with tons of people who just take Essence of Thought's line of bullshit about the actions and motives of people he does not know, and he was not in Austin to know what was going on at the time. Some of what he said was refuted by people who told the internet what happened at various points in the kerfuffle. Basically, this experience confirms for me that Essence of Thought is actually worse than either Stephen Woodford or Matt Dillahunty or the ACA. Those people or groups do not insist that their message get out to the masses unchallenged. The evidence is presented and you, the viewer, are left to make your own decision. Kind of like what I did here. However, when it comes to interactions with essence of thoughtlessness, you'd have better luck and a more enjoyable time talking to a brick.